Malik didn't know what his childhood sounded like. He had photos, sure, smiles frozen in time, candles on cakes, arms around shoulders, but he couldn't hear the laughter, couldn't feel the joy. He had lived through seizures so severe they'd wiped away years of memory. Whole chapters lost like pages torn from a book he never got to finish. Then one day, while cleaning out his grandmother's attic, he found something strange, an old tape recorder, and when he pressed play, a little boy's voice filled the air. It was his, from a time he didn't remember, talking about space adventures and chocolate pudding like the world hadn't fallen apart yet. That 5-minute recording didn't just bring back the past. It gave Malik back a part of himself he thought was gone forever. And what he did next changed countless lives. Malik was the kind of kid who wore his joy on his sleeves, the kind who turned cardboard boxes into castles, who narrated life like a movie, who asked more questions in an hour than most adults did in a day. But when he was 9, everything changed. It started with dizzy spells, then blackouts, then seizures that came like storms, unpredictable, violent, terrifying. Doctors scrambled for answers. His parents searched hospital after hospital, clinging to every possible diagnosis. Eventually, the words came temporal lobe epilepsy, and by then, Malik had already started forgetting. First, it was math facts, then the names of friends, then entire birthdays, holidays, gone. His brain, overwhelmed by trauma and medication, began erasing the very memories that made him, him. By the time Malik turned 13, most of his early years were a blur. Photos became puzzles he couldn't solve. His mother's stories felt like fairy tales about a boy he wasn't sure had ever existed. Sometimes he would stare at himself in the mirror and wonder, what kind of kid was I? Not in the philosophical sense. Literally, what did I sound like? What made me laugh? What scared me? What did my voice even sound like? People around him tried to help. They gave him journals to write in, hoping he'd build new memories to replace the old. They filled albums with labels and captions. But nothing replaced what was missing. The living, breathing feeling of his past. Malik wasn't broken. He got good grades. He functioned. He smiled. But he always carried a quiet ache, a silence inside him where a childhood used to sing. And for a long time, he thought it would stay silent forever. It happened on a rainy Sunday, one of those quiet afternoons that felt suspended in time. Malik was helping his aunt clean out his late grandmother's house. Boxes lined the hallway, labeled in her spidery handwriting. Old photos, kitchen stuff, Malik plus Samir, 2000 to 2006. He reached for the one with his name. Inside, faded Polaroids, macaroni art projects, and a dusty old tape recorder, the kind with chunky buttons and a peeling sticker on the side that said, "Do not erase Malik stories." His breath caught. He didn't remember the recorder. He didn't remember recording anything, but something about it felt important. He pressed play. The tape hissed to life. Then a high, bright voice filled the room. "Hi, my name is Malik. I'm 6 years old, and this is my jungle adventure." Malik froze. The sound hit him like a wave. It wasn't just audio, it was him. The way his R's wobbled, the giggle in the middle of a sentence, the way he broke into song for no reason. He sat down, stunned, as the younger version of himself kept talking, telling stories, asking invisible listeners if they wanted to go on a rocket ride, pretending to be a lion, a chef, a robot. And in between the silliness were tiny moments that shattered him. I love you, Mom. When I grow up, I want to help people remember things. The room blurred, tears welled in his eyes, not because the voice was unfamiliar, but because it was undeniably him. That voice had been waiting all these years, waiting to be heard again, waiting to remind Malik of the boy he used to be. And in that moment, knees pressed to a hardwood floor, holding a forgotten cassette, Malik felt something crack open, not just memory, but belonging. The boy he had forgotten had finally spoken back. From the moment Malik heard his childhood voice, something shifted. He couldn't stop thinking about that tape. In the days that followed, he dug through every box in his grandmother's attic. Old drawers, photo albums, VHS tapes, even broken toys, hoping for more pieces of the past. And he found them. Another cassette marked Malik's Song Experiments, a home video of him at age 8, dancing with his cousins in footy pajamas. A letter he wrote to his future self in crayon, ending with, "Don't forget to smile, you always do." Each artifact cracked open a memory, a laugh, a treehouse, his mom singing to him while braiding his hair. It wasn't that the memories came back in perfect order. They arrived like whispers, soft, scattered, unfinished, but each one stitched a new thread into the fabric of his identity. And something beautiful happened. Malik began recording again. He bought a digital recorder. He started journaling, not in words, but in sounds. Birdsong in the morning, the creak of his apartment floor, the laughter of his niece when she visited, even his own voice reading the bedtime stories he didn't remember loving, but now felt drawn to. Each sound was a breadcrumb on the path back to himself. Eventually, he built something with it. An audio project, part memoir, part archive, titled Echoes of a Boy I Knew. He layered his adult reflections with fragments from the tapes, juxtaposed his adult voice with his childlike wonder, created sonic vignettes of grief, joy, and healing, and slowly people started listening. First friends, then strangers, then a podcast picked it up. Malik was invited to speak at memory clinics, childhood trauma conferences, even schools, not because he was a professional therapist, but because he had become something more personal, a translator between who we were and who we've forgotten. All because one forgotten tape said, "Hi, I'm Malik. Want to hear a story?" And he answered yes. As Malik's project gained attention, so did the questions he wasn't ready to answer. People praised the beauty of his work, but few understood the weight of piecing together a life you don't remember living. At night, Malik often sat with the recordings and wept, because for every joyful rediscovery, a birthday song, a shared joke with his sister, there were missing pieces that echoed louder, entire years erased by trauma, a father's voice he couldn't find, a hospital stay no one had recorded, a moment he was certain had happened, but no one else remembered. He began doubting the validity of his memories. Were they real? Or just stories he wanted to be true? And there was guilt too. How could he forget his mother's lullabies? The way his brother's hand used to feel in his. Was forgetting a betrayal? For a time, Malik stopped recording. He felt like a fraud, a man broadcasting stories to the world while privately spiraling. But then, one message changed everything. It came from a listener, a woman whose son, after surviving years in foster care, couldn't remember the sound of his own laughter. She wrote, "Your voice gave my son a map back to himself." And Malik realized something he'd never seen before. His pain wasn't just personal, it was shared. The forgetting, the searching, the ache for wholeness. He wasn't alone, so he leaned in, not just into the beautiful parts of memory, but the broken, buried, and bruised ones too. He created an episode called The Blank Tape, an ode to the years he couldn't recover. No music, just breathe, static, silence, and it became his most shared piece because sometimes the silence says everything. That episode didn't just connect him to listeners, it connected him to himself. And in accepting the silence, he found a louder kind of peace. Malik never set out to be remembered. He just wanted to remember. But in trying to reclaim his own childhood, he ended up giving countless others the courage to face theirs. His podcast, Echoes of Us, grew from a tiny corner of the internet to a sanctuary for the forgotten. Survivors of trauma, refugees whose childhoods were scattered across continents, people with degenerative conditions, dementia, or simply grief. They came to Malik's voice not just for stories, but for permission. Permission to mourn what was lost, to celebrate what could still be found, to believe that even if memory fails, meaning doesn't. One school began using his recordings as part of a project on empathy, pairing old family sounds with art and writing. Hospitals used his blank tape episode in therapy for patients struggling with amnesia or PTSD. A young girl in Serbia recorded her grandmother telling a bedtime story inspired by Malik so it wouldn't vanish after she passed. And an archive in Denmark offered to preserve Echoes of Us as part of their global audio memory project. But Malik's legacy isn't a podcast. It's not the downloads or the awards or the museum curation. It's in the quiet decisions people make after hearing his story. To hit record, to ask questions, to sit in silence with someone who's forgotten who they are, and say, "You're still here, I'm still listening." Malik gave us back the small sounds we didn't know we missed, and in doing so, he became more than a voice. He became a guide through the static. Malik once believed that forgetting meant failure, that if he couldn't recall the names, the smells, the laughter, then maybe those moments were never real to begin with. But he was wrong, because memory isn't just a filing cabinet. It's not only neurons firing or photos in a box. It's the way your body tenses at a certain song, the way your voice softens when you speak to someone who feels like home. It's the silence you keep when words would only break what's sacred. And sometimes it's in a scratchy tape recording where a little boy says, "Hi, this is me. I don't want to forget." Malik realized something that changed him. We don't keep memories. They keep us. They're not just in what we remember, but in how we continue, in how we treat others, in the pauses we protect, in the stories we pass on, even if we can't finish them ourselves. He learned that forgetting didn't make him broken. It made him human, and choosing to remember anyway, that made him whole. Malik still keeps that old tape recorder. It doesn't always play perfectly. Sometimes the ribbon catches, the volume fades, but that little voice, his voice, still breaks through. He's made a habit now of pressing record again, not to hold on forever, but to honor the moment. He records conversations with his nieces, the sound of rain on his windowsill, the way his mother laughs when she tells old stories, even if he can't remember them himself. At community centers, Malik now leads memory workshops, not just for those with dementia or trauma, but for anyone who's ever felt like they were disappearing from their own life. He tells them, "You don't need a perfect memory to have a meaningful past. You just need moments that matter and the courage to feel them again. And when he speaks, his voice steady, clear, alive. He sounds nothing like that scared little boy on the tape, but somehow they're still the same, because that boy had something to say. And now, finally, the world is listening. If you've ever felt like your past is a blur, if there are pieces of you that feel out of reach, know this: you are not broken. You are becoming. Sometimes healing doesn't come in big moments, but in a voice on a tape, a memory, in a smell, a story you finally let yourself believe again. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might need a reminder that even forgotten parts of us can lead to the most powerful beginnings. And if you've ever lost your way, drop a speech bubble in the comments and tell us, what moment would you record if you could? Subscribe to Able in Every Way for more stories that remember what the world often forgets: the quiet, courageous victories inside us all.